Thanks to our viewers for signing in from wherever you're tuning in at this point in time. We hope you're keeping safe with your loved ones. This is more a panel, a forum where we come together discussing the present situations, what our viewpoints are going forward, and most definitely come together as a community. There will be specific questions at this session that will be answered. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on the question and answers panel that we have down below your screen, and we will try our best for our experts to answer those for you. All right, I think we will begin officially now. Welcome everyone to yet another Vivaah Weddings live session, looking beyond the global healthcare crisis. We thank you for joining us from different parts of the world. My name is Rahul Kumar, Director of Vivaah Weddings, and along with my business partner Arun, we are privileged to have you here on our live session today. Each week, we speak to a panel of experts and industry leaders for them to share their viewpoints, their opinions, and their perspective about the present situation that we are all in, and perhaps what the future holds for us. Over the last couple of weeks, we have had leading wedding planners from the Middle East. We've had top directors from tourism boards around the world. And on today's panel, we have global hospitality leaders with us who represent different hotel groups. To begin my round of introduction, I would begin with Renu Basu, Senior Vice President, Global Sales and Marketing, IHCL, Indian Hotels Company Limited, which has under its umbrella brands such as the prestigious Taj, Selections, and Vivanta. Thanks for accepting an invitation, Renu. It's a pleasure and privilege to have you on this session.
Thank you for having me be part of the panel, Rahul.
Thank you.
And Arun, yeah.
Next, it's my privilege to introduce Evert Schul, Vice President Sales, Hyatt Group. Welcome to our panel, Evert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's glad to be with you guys.
Next, I would like to introduce Pippa Williamson, Senior Vice President Sales, Shangri-La Group. We really appreciate you accepting our invitation, Pippa. Thanks for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Our next panelist is Mark Sawkins, Vice President Operations Gulf, Accor Group, which has under its umbrella prestigious brands such as Fairmont, Sofitel, Raffles, Banyan Tree, and many more. Welcome, Mark.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me over tonight as well. This afternoon as well.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this panel, Ginny Kohli from Wedwise in India, which is a leading online portal for wedding inspirations and venue listings. Thanks, Ginny, for navigating today's session.
Thank you so much, Arun, for Rahul, for this lovely introduction. And also, thank you so much, Arun and Rahul, for putting together such a wonderful panel. And I think this is the need of the hour. We need to talk about the crisis. We need to also give out some positivity in the market. So definitely a great panel to have and a great discussion ahead.
Thank you so much. Before we continue, I'd like to inform all our viewers that the opinions expressed in this discussion and viewpoints are purely opinions and perspectives of the panelists and in no way should be misconstrued to be any official statement or announcement from any respective group. So we're going to go into a pattern of having free flow discussions, putting forward our viewpoints and our opinions, and we're happy to answer any questions that may come across from your end on a personal capacity. Ginny, I leave this forward to you to navigate the rest of the discussion and the panel.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Well, welcome once again to all the esteemed panelists. It's absolute pleasure to be in the company of such great leaders. I also would like to welcome all our viewers. We are looking forward to a very insightful discussion. So please feel free to give us your questions while we are doing the debate on the crisis situation for the hotel industry. Please feel free to use the chat box to give us your questions and we'll try our best to answer them during the discussion. So let's begin. You know, I think all of us all personal needs, literally. The hotel industry is not immune. But out of the direst of times, I think ingenuity sometimes takes hold. all around the globe, big hotels, small hotels, city hotels are finding ways to pivot their businesses as they try to stay afloat. Even though the hotel industry seems to be heading for a standstill right now, I'm sure there are strategies that can help minimize this commercial impact of the virus on the industry. So I would like for all of you to answer this question for me, as I would address it to all of you individually after this. The question really is that after COVID-19 is in the rear view mirror, how will the meetings and the hotel industry have changed forever? What will be the proverbial new normal according to you? So Ms. Basu, I'll start with you. If you could tell me, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. The new normal is going to be very different from what we were till, I would say, 3rd of March, for us in India at least, when the news spread. So the new normal is going to be dictated by social distancing and safety, security in terms of hygiene. So keeping that in mind, we will have to cater to the customers' needs. And the customers are going to are in a very, we need to be empathetic with our customers. And the other thing is, I believe very strongly, and luckily we have all the hotel companies that share the same kind of values like we have in India, is the trusted brands will be the brands that people will seek in this scenario. So therefore, keeping these 3 aspects in mind, the new normal is about social distancing, safety and hygiene, and trust is going to play a very, very important part, and showing and demonstrating empathy to customers. Yes, there is going to be a little bit of concern in the beginning. There are 2 sides here. People have a short memory. They tend to forget and go back to their old ways. However, we will be dictated by a lot of the rules and regulations of each country. They've not yet been announced, but I anticipate that happening. So people there is a pent-up demand. People are dying to go out. They're dying to eat out. They're dying to connect with each other, because, it's nice to be connected through technology. But all of us feel the need for an emotional being or a person. And we are all brought up like that. So I see that there is a lot of hope and positivity. And all of us here on the panel are here to sell happiness. And we will make sure we will, and especially in the weddings. And yeah.
Great. So hygiene, sanitation, and trust are the 3 big key things, I think, for you, which will define the new normal for the hotel industry. Mark, I would like to ask you the same question. What, according to you, would be the new normal now, post the crisis?
Well, I think that Renu has already mentioned the key pillars of it, and being all the big brands, I mean, without doubt, will be putting in their own measures of hygiene and health and safety and the standards. We finalized our local ones in the Middle East already, but we're going to work with a global team together, and we're going to be next week sending out our international standards on hygiene. I think that's going to be the foremost for now, and to give your weddings and your business and your clients that trust, that they feel secure and safe when they come to you. And the wedding anyway is built on trust. If you do any wedding events, they're all built on trust, and you know how the families are, and it's all of, if you don't have the first impression, if you don't get the first trust at the first meeting, most probably not going to have the wedding. Now the hygiene part is going to be the second part of it. So we have to make sure that we follow those hygiene standards. But I'm already very positive that we're going to have in the 4th quarter some weddings coming up. We have a few on the pipeline already, a few booked and confirmed. And that's where the trust plays even a bigger role. And we have to start thinking out of the box as well. How are we going to be doing weddings now in future? Is a buffet going to be part of it, etc.? I'm sure we're going to talk a bit more about it during today's call. But hygiene, trust, and do something differently than what we did before.
Right, great. That's, what do you agree with Mark? I mean, he's of course suggesting that hygiene is definitely one of the strongest pillars of measures that one needs to take now in the hotel industry, and trust, of course, goes hand in hand with that. Is there anything else you would like to add to this that you feel would be the new normal or redefines the way hotels look at the industry now?
I think if I look at it, what I currently see is 3 stages. There's the defensive strategy that we had at the beginning, just honestly, at some stage, fighting for survival, just dealing with the impactful coronavirus or the COVID-19. Then there's business continuity, which I'm thinking most of the countries that I'm responsible for, at least, and that stretches from India up to the UK, you see different stages of business continuity. But we are, in some stages, we're actually at the end of it, looking at recovery, which I would probably call the offensive strategy. I think now we are seeing that momentum of customers, and I completely agree with Mark and Renu, what you guys said. It's really about customers want to go out again. They want to, particularly if the wedding business as such, it's the most important moment of your entire life. And you of course like to celebrate that with many, many people around. So the hygienic and the sanitary requirements are going to be different. I don't want to call it new normal. I would probably call it the next normal, because what I see, yes, we will have to live with the new circumstances, but what is happening is once we've got a vaccine, I think we will see a completely different shift in that business again. So whilst recovery is there, it might take a little bit longer than we expect, but I think what I definitely see, I see the upside of weddings and leisure business being the first to come back. And that's the reason why it's good to speak to you guys, because I think we're all in agreement. And Mark, thank you very much for highlighting that. It's really about making sure that the customers, as well as the guests and the hotels in any space, whether it's the function space, whether it's the ballrooms, whether it's the public gardens, that they feel safe and secure. And I think that's what we need to ensure for the first time, and make sure that they feel comfortable in going to our hotels again, to our venues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Edward. It's very insightful. Pippa, I come to you now. Of course, they've mentioned the strongest pillars for the new normal. I actually came across an article that you once mentioned about, how everyone needs to do something differently from each other to stay relevant. If I quote you, it's something like this that you said: it's important to try not to be everything to everyone. That's something that you suggested, and that really stayed with me in your article. And you talked about reassessing the digital strategies as well as a part of the new normal. So do you agree with this statement that you made, and with the other panelists here, and what defines the new normal for you?
Absolutely. I can't remember what context I might have made that actual comment in, but it's something that I do talk about a lot. And I think agility and reinvention is something that's going to be really important in the recovery. I think absolutely my peers here have echoed the same sentiments that I have and that we have as an organisation around hygiene becoming one of the most important factors. Fortunately or unfortunately, we've had quite a bit of experience with this in the past at Shangri-La. With over half of our portfolio sitting in mainland China, we're already starting to see the green shoots and have a taste of what those consumers are looking for in social meetings and in greater meetings as well. So I think, certainly post-SARS, Asia was a very different place than it was before. Wearing a face mask in Hong Kong was actually something that was quite common. If you had a cold, you wore a mask. If you were feeling unwell, you didn't go to work. It's sort of the social responsibility is something that comes to the forefront. And if people can feel confident and others can remain and act in a socially responsible way, then people have that innate need for personal connection. I think somebody asked me last week about sort of technology and virtual meetings and things like that as well. I think that will continue, but a lot of studies have been done around personal touch and how important that is. I think from a wedding perspective, it's such a joyous event. And over these times, I think we've all had the chance to reflect a lot around what's important to us. And I think most of us just really have decided we really need to make family and friends a priority and to carve out to have more quality of time with them as well.
Great. I think I couldn't agree more. Of course, thank you, Mark, also that, you mentioned some positive attitude of the consumers here. People are looking to book weddings at the end of the year. So we are, even though the time has come to a virtual standstill due to the outbreak, the market is expected to regain its footing, I think, in the later half or early part of the next year. And now the new measures to sort of avoid contamination or the human touch, like Pippa was mentioning, has really suspended the culture of sharing in the hotels for the event space. Ms. Basu, you mentioned in one of your articles in Today's Traveler last year that the millennials want to now rewrite their rules. They want to sort of break the rules and sort of design the whole event according to their needs. And they're also ditching the heavy buffet food space to more wellness menus. And this is something that you mentioned before the outbreak happened.
Right, yeah.
The trend somehow seems to be going there now. So, you know, what do you see as the future for hotels in the catering and the event space, both for weddings and for MICE at this point?
Okay. So I'll address weddings first. You know, like Mark mentioned, I mean, about 10 days ago, we got 5 leads, out of which 3 were confirmed with deposits for the month of November. Okay, in, of course, one of our Indian hotels in, you know, Rajasthan. So there is, and in India, I just want to give a context. I'm sure most people are aware of it, but India, most of the wedding dates are determined by some auspicious dates.
Yeah.
So this year we had 42 dates for India compared to 81 last year. Out of the 42 dates, April, May, June had the maximum number of dates, 23, and the rest of the 19 are in November, December, Jan, Feb, March. We have a financial year. So there are definitely green shoots, and people are have already planned their weddings and going ahead with it. And the people who had weddings in April, May, June, some of them have had registered marriages and kept their celebrations for a later date, because obviously you couldn't have it there. So coming back to your point on the millennials, yes, they were rewriting the rules and they still are. And with this situation that we are facing, I think this is definitely going to make sure that they have the people they want at their weddings, their own friends, personal friends. The parents will want their family, and they'll want their family. So I definitely see the crowd coming down, because, you know, Indian weddings were 1,000, 1,500. I see a bit of a challenge there. Weddings will definitely happen because, again, I'm talking about India that is preordained. A wedding, education, and a home are the 3 priorities for every family. So definitely weddings will continue. Only the scale will go down, and they may spend the same amount per head, but it'll be very, very high quality. There definitely won't be buffets because it's going to change as we move forward. Like Mark, we're also putting all our processes together, which will be announced end of next week because our lockdown has been extended. So I definitely see there'll be simpler, there'll be sustainability. This will put the focus back on sustainability, you know, going back to organic food, vegan. I mean, during this period, at least the people I know, a lot of people have turned vegan because they don't want to have non-veg or meats. So I definitely see that what the millennials wanted, they will get now, you know. So I mean,
there's definitely a shift in the mindset.
yes,
for sure.
absolutely. And talking about meetings, I do believe that meetings will continue, but not large. We'll have to follow the social distancing norms of 1 meter distance from each other. And a lot of us have got used to working from home or use technology to conduct our meetings, and our business has not suffered. You know, so I do believe the meeting space will take a little longer than the wedding space, because, you know, weddings are special moments, especially for Indians, you know, because of the dates. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to take Arun's mindset here. Arun, I mean, you know, we're speaking from the hotel's point of view here about what is the future for the catering business for the weddings in MICE space. You know, you guys, of course, I've been speaking with Rahul every now and then, and he's been telling me that people are still inquiring about the weddings. And Mark also mentioned that there have been bookings that are coming through for the later part of the year. Could you tell me, has the query really changed post the crisis? You know, the way the questions that have come across to you from the consumer side or from the client, has that really changed from before the outbreak to now? Are people more conscious, like Ms. Basu said, like they would want more intimate weddings? Has that really changed, or how do you see it from the consumer's point of view right now?
Thank you, Ginny, for that question. Yes, we have been seeing, in fact, we've been seeing unusual amounts of inquiries since the last 4 to 5 weeks, which is quite positive. But also you have to understand, here in the Middle East, our season begins from September onwards, and we go on till April. So that is our key season for weddings. And also, like Renuji mentioned, our auspicious dates are during those times as well. So we've been seeing a rise in the number of inquiries from usual because the situation that is with Europe, a lot of the HNIs are now looking to move their celebrations to the Middle East as opposed to wanting to go to Italy or any other part of Europe, because it's something that they're not very confident about. Confidence now plays a huge role when it comes to convincing the client, and I'll talk about that a little later. But back to the question, yes, we've been seeing a lot of inquiries. We've in fact signed up 4 or 5 weddings in the last 6 weeks. Some of these are in Oman, many of these are in the UAE, and a few inquiries in Bahrain as well. In terms of how their mindset has changed or what has changed in terms of their ask, at this point, they're just nervous. So the only one thing that most of our clients are asking us to do is to ensure that there is a clause in the contracts from the hotels that for whatever reason, if people cannot travel or if there is a second wave of this virus coming back in and they can't do their weddings in October, November, December, and they have to push to next year or mid next year, there should be a clause from the hotels, and that kind of flexibility is what is now being asked by our clients. In terms of, obviously we have been telling them that buffets are going to be things of the past, so we're going to be looking at more sit-down dinners. Personally, Rahul and I are not big fans of buffets anyways, but yeah, those buffet lines are not going to be big. However, at this point, people are quite optimistic and they're still looking into a positive Q4.
Okay, fabulous. So I think this also takes me to understand something here, that, you know, social distancing is sort of counterintuitive to the typical high touch hospitality mindset, and what guests are usually accustomed to. You know, they opt for hotels for a reason, and I believe now to sort of counter that or to give the personal touch still, hotels would be working really hard to come out with innovative ways. And I would like to touch upon that particular bit as well. So Pippa, my question is to you really here, that, you know, like I said, social distancing versus what hotels really stand for in terms of personalization and, you know, giving that human touch to making the customer feel really, really special. How do you feel, what measures are being taken by the hotel groups here in your particular group for making sure that the hygiene is sort of the key priority still, and it still stays in touch with the whole essence of the hotels overall?
Yeah, and I think it sort of goes back to what I said earlier regarding the measures that we put in post-SARS. And I think that the personal touch, we all sort of think about that as the personal touch needing to be physical. And, you know, Shangri-La, with our hospitality from the heart ethos, it's actually about a genuine way of service. So you can still provide a genuine service without actually having to be in close proximity or close touch with guests. So I think some of the measures that are being put in place by our group and by most of the obviously the luxury groups globally are really speaking to that. So how do we best service your needs? You know, anticipate what you need, and yet deliver it in a safe environment that still makes you feel valued, special, and resonates with a genuine service nature. So I think that's going to be the change. I think the difficulty in it all is when somebody turns up with your room service in a hazmat suit, you generally feel warm and fuzzy. No, not necessarily. So the other measures that go behind that, I think, is definitely where we see the opportunity to interact. And I think technology will play a much bigger part in this. So, you know, you don't want to have paper menus, room service menus in your rooms that you can't sanitize. So how do you interact in a more genuine environment through technology with your guests?
Yeah, and I think if I can just add on to this, I think when you talk about genuine service, I think authenticity comes in there. And what is most importantly, it's an increased way of personalizing the experience as well. I mean, Arun, you mentioned that the buffet as we know it in the big hospitality hotels, it's not going to happen anymore, at least on a temporary basis, because of social distancing and making sure that the hygiene standards are adhered to. But what I also like to add on to is that, of course, it differs. Every single regional legislation or authority has different measurements. And I saw in some of the Q&A chat box, I just saw the question, will it be fever temperature measurement? Will there be similar after SARS in Hong Kong? You saw those big machines when you arrived at the airport that were measuring the heat of your body. Those are things that are, of course, driven by local authorities as well as legislation. And I think, for example, when we are working with I need to read this because it's just been announced 2 days ago, the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. So there is some institutions that are giving recommendations on how social distancing needs to be adhered to. And operations, I'm looking at Mark here in particular because you're the ops guy here. It's really interesting to see how we need to rethink our processes and as well as our service levels. Yes, it does come with more effort. And I think this is something, particularly looking at Arun, Rahul here, we need to be able to communicate to customers that even though they might expect a buffet, they might not be getting it. And I want to avoid disappointment, but rather say, this is not only local legislation, but here's a much better alternative because you've got plated service, whatever it is, right? I think we need to do a better job in conveying what the new normal looks like. And I see, particularly in the service of the hotels, I see a certain level of confidence. We need to be confident, as well as the customer needs to be comfortable in using our hotels. And then we need to have a competence to be able to say, we're not health experts, right? But we still need to communicate in one way or the other what the new requirements look like. And if we don't demonstrate that, going back to Pippa, what you said about genuine service, we're not able to demonstrate that and showcase that, we are probably in a difficult spot. And I think Mark and you mentioned processes are coming, right? So it's something that is being done right now everywhere.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we can see a lot of hotels taking measures and are probably making permanent changes to their operations to be able to cater to the customers, keeping in mind their hygiene, sanitation as well. And I believe, if I may just ask you about, I just recently read that Hyatt is, by 2020 this year, they will be looking at appointing at least one hygiene manager across all their properties per property. Is that one of the reasons? Is that one of the measures that's being taken by the group to cater to this particular need?
That's right. I think in some high-touch hotels, you already have somebody who is responsible for hygiene, but it is more like a go-to person for customers, as I said, to feel actually quite confident and to feel comfortable to have somebody who's a little bit more knowledgeable around it. I'm not saying that we will have experts on the spot, but we have hygiene managers who've got the training and the education in order to convey that in the right fashion to the right guests. I think the other thing that we do see, we've brought industry experts as well as health experts into a forum. So it is, and this is probably part of the next normal. This is ongoing. This is, it's learn to a certain degree. It's also learning as we walk. And I think there's 3 stages. There's crawling, there's walking, and there's running. Before we start to run in regards to the new hygienic measurements, we need hygiene managers on property to make sure there's a consistency of hygiene and sanitation given.
May I just
yes,
I just want to add, I'm sure all my peers have had this. We've always had hygiene and these measures in the hotels, whether it was food safety, whether it was for cleanliness. It's just that it has been enhanced to a different level because COVID-19 is perceived to be transmitted through surfaces. So that is more visual in public areas, but hygiene was being practiced in all the internal areas, in all, at least in our hotel company, whether it was the HACCP for food, whether it was hygiene in the public areas or the private spaces like the rooms and the restaurants. It's just that because COVID-19 is a different virus, and it is, that's why it just got enhanced. And therefore the processes will not be, the warm and fuzzy service will be there. Empathy will be at a greater extent because the mindset of the customer. It's just that the appearance, you may not see people in their swishy saris anymore. I don't know. But I'm just saying, so I just thought I'd add to that.
No, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think now, if in continuation to this discussion that we've been having about hygiene and how the permanent change is happening, we will of course see, and a lot of reports, all of us have been seeing there has been a dip in the demand in the market. Of course, this comes as no surprise because given the present day global travel restrictions and the overall sentiment in the market, one would expect a reaction to a scenario like this. Now, this is purely B2B, and we're trying to just understand from a hotel's perspective. One reaction to such a scenario that you would expect a hotel to react in a way would be that they drop rates to try and boost the occupancy, so that they are sort of maintaining a balanced portfolio and knowing that there is a price sensitivity in the market as well. So my question would be with Mark here. What would you suggest? Will this be a viable contingency plan for the hotels in order to create a balanced portfolio during the recovery mode, which is slashing of the pricing?
No, I think that's the wrong direction to take, and I don't think my peers and other properties or groups would follow the same. We will be market-related, pricely driven, and yes, there will be introduction offers again when we open now, when we start out in a week or two. But in the long run, we can't do that because there's a cost running luxury hotels and there's a cost running the services we're going to provide, especially the new enhanced services and the hygiene, etc. Whatever we have to do, it's going to come with a cost. If we would start dropping the rates now, we will A, would recover from that, and B, would be able to provide the high-class luxury standards that you're expecting from us as an operator. So it will be totally the wrong direction to do is to slash prices and just to buy business for any price that comes. We won't do that.
Sure.
It will be sensible. It will be sensible, and it will be sensible or reasonable, but it wouldn't be, a
long-term strategy that would last for the benefit of
exactly.
What's your point of view in this one?
Thank you, but I can only agree with Mark, and I know that Renu and Pippa are also in agreement here. It is after 2001, after 2008, it clearly has shown that there is just no way out. It doesn't create additional demand at all. And I think what is key here, Mark, is I agree with you fully. Is if you look at other segments, for example, in the corporate segment, I mean, the Global Business Travel Association, they just came out with a recommendation to roll over corporate rates from 2020 to 2021, because ultimately we're all facing the same situation. It's a unique incident, it's a unique circumstances. In order to facilitate and make it easier for customers as well as for our hotels, just move it along, because I think that's what we ideally is. But Mark, I agree with you, it needs to be market conform rates. And this is something that, of course, with our beloved colleagues from revenue management as well as from marketing, we'll see that we can actually execute that. But it's not that we want to artificially hold up the rates, but we want to make sure that the service that you get, and it's an enhanced service, particularly in hygiene level, is something that if you want to have luxury experience, there's also a certain price to pay for that.
And I think, Everett, you're right. And we operate in such a competitive market already. So, our pricing is always relevant to that. And I think fundamentally, people are not traveling because we're too expensive or that they're not seeing value in the services that we provide. They're not traveling because they're scared. If we play with rates, it just becomes a race to the bottom, and recovery for our industry will take so much longer. And service standards and quality will be jeopardized.
Yeah, I'd just like to add here about the price. We've seen in many cycles, by dropping the price, like Everett said, you're not creating demand. We need to be careful with our pricing, because to come back to what, hotels have a lot of expenses. We've never been through a situation like this. Like Mark is heads operations. We have owners to answer to. We have employees we need to retain. We need to look after their jobs. If we go to the pit, we'll never be able to rise again. And of course, we'll be fair with our pricing. Like all my peers have said, it's market related. We're not going to be unreasonable, but we also have to be reasonable, and we should be looked at with a responsible pair of eyes. That, when we're giving these new services, they are coming at a cost. And then, people, in fact, I believe that people will be prepared to pay a premium to use brands like ours because of, again, I'm bringing back the trust factor. Because security and trust and empathy are the three very critical pillars going forward for our industry. Empathy was always there, trust was always there. But safety and hygiene was there, but it's got enhanced because of what people have been through mentally and physically.
Yeah, there's a big investment in MICE and in weddings. When you make that investment to bring that group into a different destination, and you fly all your guests out and you book the rooms, and there's a massive cost, and to have it all ruined by a mediocre service delivery at the end because the numbers don't stack up, and it's going to be causing more risk and more damage than anything else. And believe me, we don't want to run business which loses, but we're also not going to be ripping guests off or anything. We never have, and we never will do. It's all fair and market related, and there's a cost if you come into a luxury segment, and we're proud of it, and we're gonna. My peers are the same. That they come from very good brands, strong brands, luxury brands, and that's what we do. That's why they come back to us again, because we provide that standard. Imagine cutting costs on a wedding.
Yeah.
You will never do a wedding again in your hotel.
Yeah, I'd like to second what Mark and Renu were saying. I think there's always a client who's willing to pay the right price for a product, and for a product that is esteemed, and it's providing professional services, it's taking care of client servicing, and it's the highest levels of delivery. I think there will be clients who are coming out to spend that kind of money. It just brings me back to the point that we were speaking of earlier, where people are waiting to spend. They want to go out there and they want to indulge. They've been sitting at their homes very long. Mark was mentioning earlier, online shopping has seen a rise, and that's because it all comes down to retail therapy. People want to buy things to feel better because they possess new things. People want to possess new experiences. They want to feel and go out there again. A simple example to give you is how people are willing to pay a premium for an Apple product that gets released after a long span in time. So people are deprived of a certain product. There's a lot of headlines out there. There's a lot of business news out there. There's a lot of marketing that goes behind launching an Apple product. But when it's launched, are those then introduced at a price cut? No, it goes on a premium. So people are willing to pay premium because they want to be the first ones to be able to enjoy that experience. So I think with the demand being there for the right product, it is very rightly said, as Renu mentioned, I think there could be a premium that clients want to pay for the right product.
Right.
I agree with you, Rahul. I think what you do also see, you see a completely different process. Just think about the DHL delivery piece. I mean, Renu, in our pre-chat, you talked about what some of the Indian restaurants are doing. And our hotel in New Delhi, the Hyatt Regency there, they've got a great Chinese restaurant, and they have contactless delivery because people are longing. They're longing for the experience. They're longing to be with friends in the restaurant. So I agree with you, Rahul. I think they're willing to invest in when they get the right return of the interaction that they're longing for. And I think this is something that we will see as a big part of the recovery, albeit probably more local and regional at first. And then before travel and accessibility comes in, then they will be also able to travel international. And Arun, you mentioned it. I still hope that we will have some Indian weddings in Venice at some stage, right? But it's just not happening. And we are clearly aware of that, right? So it's a change of business mix, it's a change of geographical source markets. This is where everything around the local market will be first and foremost important.
This was actually
I've seen.
Sorry, Rahul, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a small point. I've seen now with the present condition that we have, the ease out on the lockdowns here in the city that we're in. Many of the restaurants and many of the public spaces have been made available for people to go out there, but in a certain capacity, which is I think 30% of its full capacity. I've come to understand that the restaurants are actually asking and demanding for a minimum spend should you wish to come and be at the restaurant. So you see there, when I speak of the right price to pay for the right product, if a client wants to go into the restaurant, wants to dine on a weekend, because of the 30% capacity limitation that there is, the hotels or the restaurants are now asking, saying you need to have a minimum spend if you're going to come and consume at our restaurants. So I think as things go forward, the demand is going to be there, and with the supply being still limited of sorts, people would be willing to either have their minimum spends catered to and suffice for, or even pay a premium for the product.
Right. So just adding to the entire discussion here, this was actually my next question about, since customers are going to be more aware of where they're spending the money or what are they visiting. They'll become more aware of the safety of the food choices they make in these places. And that brings me to the next question. There'll definitely be a shift in the consumer thinking, on how the food is being handled, where are the ingredients coming from, what is the source, is it good enough, how many people are visiting, all those things will be taken into account from a consumer's mindset. So what are the trends that we see in the dining space of hotels, the F&B? And is what Everett said, the contactless dining, the future of F&B in hotels? I want to start with Pippa, if she could give me a little heads up on this particular question to begin with.
Yeah, I think, dining will never become completely contactless throughout all parts of the hotel. It's not realistic. And I don't think it's something that most people really desire. It's not something new, however. We've had Gino and Jenna, our Hotel Gen robots, delivering meals and food to our rooms in our Hotel Gen brand for a couple of years now already. So in that mid-scale space, it was already actually being quite tested across the industry. And I think a lot of different technology to support that has started to come out in different aspects, whether it be to use your mobile app to access your room, facial recognition, those kind of things, in terms of checking in without actually seeing a person. I think those kind of aspects have already been in development for some time. The food element, however, is something that will continue to evolve. However, I don't think in a luxury hotel it will ever be completely contactless, nor will our guests actually desire that.
Let me just quickly reiterate, so there's no misunderstanding, Ginny. It's really about the current business continuity, where you still try to flatten the curve, as they always say, right? It's try to reduce the number of infections. This is where things contactless are probably more relevant than in the recovery phase, where we've got new processes in place to what you said, Pippa. We see hotels where customers are using a mobile device and read the menu by clicking on the QR code. That seems to be having a comeback. Those are the things that are happening in order to reduce the risk of infection. But at the end of the day, I agree fully with Pippa. The restaurants will never be really, really contactless. But once the vaccine is there, it's going to be returning to the much more personal interaction, I feel, as well.
Yeah, if I can add to that as well, if you don't mind. The human being is a social being, and it's also a very forgettable being, as I said earlier. We're going to want to go to a crowded bar in a year's time and have drinks with our friends and don't worry about anything. And it's going to be because we're going to be putting all these new processes in place and procedures in place, and we're not going to wear the masks in a year's time anymore, because if it is right, by that time there will be a vaccine. People feel more comfortable. If you've done all your homework now and you become a trusted venue, I don't want to sit in a restaurant where there's only 30% capacity for the rest of my life, because then I won't go, and then these restaurants will all close, and then we will have only deliveries going forward. But we have to quickly overcome this as quick as we can. And we're seeing it now already, that with the hotels we opened, where we have beach allowance now here in Dubai, they're being packed from day one, and we're managing it very well. We social distance everyone. But I don't see the human being going into a restaurant with 15 people, 20 people in a 100-seater restaurant. That's not going to happen. So we just have to become credible, and people have to trust us again. Once they trust us, they will come and spend their money with us again. And we just, I think it's going to become a norm again. There's this long flat curving, which we'll talk about. I think we're coming to a point that we're managing it better, and we will soon be over that hurdle.
And so you're right, Margot. One of the interesting things in the recovery in China that we've seen is, as mobility restrictions have been easing, our guests and in the local communities are flocking back to our hotels to dine with us. So, and as a hotel organisation, it's a trusted venue that they feel that it's a safe venue to eat in, and that desire to get out and celebrate birthdays or just celebrate being able to be together with their loved ones has become really important. So I think if the rest of the world follows the green shoots that we're starting to see in China in terms of dining, then we will get back to the norm, or the new normal, as we'd like to say, as people feel more comfortable.
Yeah, so I just like to add here on the restaurants. Definitely, restaurants, people need to get out. They need a good ambience. They could get this food at their home, but everybody has a longing, has a memory and association to going into restaurants. Yes, in the revival phase, there would be norms to be followed. Your capacity of your restaurants will come down initially. But once we come into the post-vaccine phase, like Mark said, we would see normalcy returning. That definitely people like to be out. We're all social beings. The other thing is there's some innovation happening today, like Everett mentioned about Hyatt in Delhi. So even we've started hospitality at home, where we are in certain cities delivering food, certain cities it's a pickup service. So people definitely want innovations, new ways of getting their food. They urge for it. And the other thing that will happen is, like we mentioned, the buffets will be out. So your breakfast will not be the same again. You will have to have customized breakfast. And food and beverage is not going to die out. I think 50% of all our revenues come from food and beverage outlets. It's because customers want it. So I think F&B is not, it's definitely here to stay, but not immediately. So it's in the post-vaccine era.
Great. I think we've had a very good, insightful discussion on how the hotels are trying to take measures to combat the crisis situation. And if I just go back to addressing how the event business and hotels can work hand in hand to make sure that the runway is good enough for us to reach a destination which is happy for all of us in the industry. So I would like to ask all of you again one thing here. I'll actually start with Pippa this time, on how can wedding planners assist the hotels once the market opens up? Because you've spoken about technology evolving and being used in the conferencing world and for the events. So how do you feel, Pippa, can the wedding planners really assist the hotels once the lockdown ends and when the market opens up again?
Yeah, and I think this is where we can really assist each other. I think we've heard from everyone today about all the measures and new measures and heightened and improved measures that we're putting in place in the hotels. Then we've heard from Arun and Rahul about the demand that's been coming in. We've seen leads in our own organisations for weddings over the last few weeks as well. So I think the way that we can work together is to make sure that we equip the wedding planners with as much information as we can, so that when they're booking weddings and talking to people that are planning weddings, that they can make them, that they themselves and the actual people being married feel very confident that we're going to be able to deliver their joyous event in a really safe environment.
Right. And Ms. Basu, any points here for you on how you feel?
Of course.
Yes,
Plenty,
yeah.
We are interdependent on each other. We're part of the same ecosystem. We assist each other in being successful. So the support is there for you. But I do believe now, at least the markets we cover, technology is going to play a very big role in selling and marketing the venue. Because, I don't know, at least in India, what happens is people love to physically go and see the venue. Many hours go in discussions for the wedding, whether it's with the planner, with the florist, with the chef, with the people providing services. We'll have to use virtual ways of showing them our hotels, showing them how we can handle all the facilities. And we have to put ourselves in your hands to promote our products as a trustworthy brand to do business and pass on the assurance, because you all play a very important role in influencing the venue, the destination, whatever. And I think you'll have to work in a customized way in the sense that location specific, because I mean, if you see in Dubai or in India, definitely the regional weddings will become more critical. Like we have weddings going overseas. I do believe that will take some time. They will keep happening locally, sometimes in the same city, then it may move to a driving distance. So we have to work together to chart all this out and see the way forward. But technology will play a very big role in taking care of needs for the future.
Mark, your points on this, and how do you feel can wedding planners really assist hotels, and how can hotels really work with the wedding planners here once the market opens up?
I think Renu touched on a lot of points already, and Pippa. The one is obviously the trust and the guidelines we have to share with our partners, so they can share it with their clients and the couples again, what we do so they feel safe and comfortable. But also our reputation and what we're doing in the market needs to be clear, and that comes from our group's perspective. That when we shout it from the roofs, if it's our core globally or our core luxury globally, we need to make sure that everybody understands that health and safety is our priority number one. I do believe that there's a comeback, and I do believe that everybody will start traveling again once the flight's coming back again, end of the year. And the comfort is there. As I said, we forget very quickly, and it's our responsibility to make sure that you're safe when you come. And I think it's, I'm talking about marketing is a big point. Joint marketing campaigns and spent our marketing money together to ensure that we reach the right targets, which is meaningful for us going into the future. Because the next 18 months are going to be crucial for us. And I think we will see everything back again in 18 months' time. But the next 18 months are about getting it for the right rate and the right service, the right standard, so we can have the repetitive business coming back again from our clients.
Absolutely. Rahul and Arun, same question goes to you, because you guys are from the event space, and you work very closely with the hoteliers, and you're sort of their brand ambassadors, if I may put it like that, in terms of reaching out to the consumer and telling them exactly where to plan their wedding. So at this point in time, how do you think you can play a role in creating a balance and emerging stronger together? Rahul, if you'd like to address that first.
You see, the fact of the matter is that we play messenger, or we actually control the communication both ways. So for the hospitality groups, we're their eyes and ears on the ground, because we meet families, we speak to them on a regular basis. We're always in a position to take back buying patterns or change in buying patterns and change in dialogues back to the hotel groups and make them understand what the ground reality is, which may help them to form certain decisions or alter the course, or perhaps come up with new regulations or new policies. At the other end, as Renu mentioned earlier, most definitely as much knowledge as we can grasp, gather as much information that we can, being spokespersons, kind of spokespersons on behalf of the hospitality groups, definitely provides us with more ammunition, provides us with more information to go out there and have our clients have the right set of expectations. So we are having a correct dialogue going on there by positioning the product correctly. So our clients understand what the new normal is going to be, what they can expect in terms of deliverables from hospitality groups. So I think that communication both is very, very important to manage expectations.
And like Rahul, you rightly said, we are going to be the flag bearers of the industry when it comes to weddings and events. The most important key here is to redevelop the confidence within the clients. So in order for that to happen, like all of you pointed out, I think information is very important. So think of us as your salespeople, right? I will only be able to sell something as a company if I'm confident in it. So when I hear back from my partner hotels and the hotels that we've worked with in the past, what the strategies are, what the new normal is, what the new offerings are, I would love to go back and as a wedding planner visit, even though I've done multiple weddings, say for example with Fairmont Ajman or with Sophie in Bahrain, Mark, for instance. I would love to go back there and to understand and see for things myself, so I can revisit, I can reconnect, I can find out the new offerings, what is going to be the new standard. Before I can become the official spokesperson, because end of the day, we do hold a certain amount of influence of the client, and once we're happy to do weddings, would be more confident to speak to our clients and let them know about the health and hygiene standards of the hotels, bring them in for site visits, maybe do food tastings, explain to them how things are done. But yeah, that information is very important, and redeveloping that trust within our client is going to be extremely key going forward. So word of mouth will play an extremely important role post-COVID.
Right. So, the panelists, I mean, all of us, when we were promoting this particular talk with the event industry people, they sent us a lot of questions in because I think we acted as an intermediator between the hotel industry and the event space. So one of the good questions that I found was very interesting for us to address was that most of you based in the UAE, and it's one of the few cities in the world where the supply sort of outweighs the demand with regards to the hotel venues. And staffing in hospitality for event planning and event sales could be a seasonal offer. So my question is to Avert, if you could tell me, would you consider something like this, an offering of the event planners and event sales guys from the hospitality sector, or would you have rather trust an agency to help source these professional people to sort of help guide this entire event space?
I feel it goes hand in hand. There's a collaboration that you currently see because ultimately it is not only our hospitality, but also the agency's intention to build on the trust. There's so much uncertainty around that. Everybody is subject to that uncertainty. So we need to reduce that if we can. So any player in that business can help in order to reduce. And I think you guys, my colleagues my peers have already said it. It's really about building trust and making sure people have the confidence to come back. And then they need to see the competence in the servicing, as well as, of course, in the generation of that business. So I see it hand in hand in a full collaboration spirit because I feel everybody is trying to pull into the same direction.
Right. Pippa, would you like to add to that? If you feel that, the staffing is because you've now moved to Dubai and now you're part of the Gulf area where the supply is sort of outweighing the demand here with the hotel venues, and staffing in hospitality for event planning usually is a seasonal offer. So do you suggest that an agency could help you with this, or an HR spend really works better in this case?
Yeah, I think it's to Everett's point. It's a bit of both. Our business in that space is quite seasonal, but then a lot of our different hotels are seasonal as well. So where we're seeing a high season in terms of events in one location, we do have the opportunity within our own groups to move our staff around and get the best expertise. So it's not just that we need to source in the local markets, but we also have the ability to mobilize our own teams. For us, because we predominantly own our assets, we do this quite often, where we actually maintain the bench strength within certain departments and certain functions, and then spread that across the group. But I do think definitely there's the opportunity to do both, yes.
Fantastic. We're almost done with the time here, but just before we go, I would like to address one thing here. While it is disheartening to see a lot of businesses struggling at this point in time, it is also important to remember that these difficult times are usually a driver of innovation. It helps you innovate, it helps you rethink, re-strategize, and COVID-19 has sort of been intimidating. But hoteliers have sort of seemed to be emerging more resilient, and I think they're applying some lessons from the past to the future, which is amazing to learn. But I would like to just ask all of you again before we end this discussion is, what are the opportunities that you feel are going to arise as a result of this changing environment for both event planners and travel operators from just the hotel's perspective? If I may start with Ms. Basu, if you could tell me.
So every crisis puts a great opportunity in front of you. We've seen that, of course. We've never seen something like that. Yeah. So I do believe at least there's a huge opportunity for F&B for hotel companies, because a lot of us were seeing more in the West than in India. We're seeing a lot of standalone restaurants coming up, and people had started shifting there. And the hygiene standards in hotels are far superior to anything else. So I do see that as a huge opportunity. Opportunity for catering, because in case people have some hesitation at a hotel, for social events, if you have a big garden in your house, you may have the wedding there. So that, again, you will see a 5-star luxury hotel company catering to that. Then there is a lot of other areas where we are taking things into people's homes, which we didn't do earlier. And also we have seen, like, this particular crisis, we term it like this. It's about survival, revival, and I know in There's no word like thrival in the dictionary, but on thriving. And that's what you're talking about when we get out of this situation that we are in. I do believe food has been a big opportunity. Digital, we have all been talking about digital, but digital has moved to a different level today. We'll be far more dependent on digital. Also, relationships is going to be very key in this new world that we live in, because sometimes people felt relationships were becoming a deterrent. I think they're going to be a catalyst going forward.
Great.
So that's all I have to say.
Super. Mark, what do you think would be the opportunities that are there for the event planners and travel operators?
Well, I think what it has allowed us to do is, because we've been working on these with our group already since the last year on new opportunities, new ways of doing business. And what COVID's done now, it's actually fast-tracked whatever we wanted to do on the, if it's contactless, if it's menus which are more digital, if it's pre-ordering your food on the app already before you get to the restaurant, etc. All those points that we've been talking about last year, and we put workshops together, but COVID has really, on a positive side, pushed it forward now, that we're fast-tracking it now, working with much more task teams around the world to fast-track it. So I think it's going to be, yes, there will be much more contactless, check in, check out, use a smartphone, face IDs, etc. That will happen. But at the end of the day, we're still a touchy business with connection and luxury. We still want to see people and talk to people and be around people. That's never going to go away. Just so we're going to give the option to our clients, and I guess to go, contactless, or go still the old way and follow the tradition. But again, I think in 12 months' time, we have a very different picture again.
Yeah. Yeah, we may have to revisit this discussion again. Evert, your points on the opportunities that are there for the event planners and travel guys here.
There are for me three things. The first thing, I can only agree with Mark, it's acceleration of what we see in the digital front. If you look at the MICE business as such, you see hybrid solutions coming up, having people book actually being physically there versus virtual. And I think our Zoom conference here just shows it does work. It's not as ideal in the leisure space, as well as it's certainly not in weddings. Virtual weddings do happen in really most extreme circumstances, but of course, celebration is something that you'd like to have face-to-face interaction. The second thing I see is sustainability, and Renu, you mentioned it at the beginning. If you look at the canals in Venice, they're suddenly clearer. If you can see the SpaceX satellites in the sky if there are no clouds. I think sustainability will come back stronger than before, and I think this is something that hopefully we will see continue and getting more emphasis. And the last piece I do see is it's really about the community, because you're on confined, you're on lockdown. I mean, you see the pictures of my daughters in the back. I'm not becoming a teacher because I don't have the qualification, and the last couple of weeks have been really tough. But if you think about it, it is exactly what that. It's about community, and you get closer to people, and that sort of is the empathy and the care piece that I think will be stressed after, whether it's right now or later on. I think there will be a different mindset as well.
Yeah, and I think I could only echo what my peers really say in this sense. I think the acceleration of how we use technology more effectively is really going to be key to the recovery as well, and to finding those opportunities. I think as well, having a business model that enables you to be quite agile. So as new trends form, that your business can evolve to them quickly. And I think there will be trends that none of us have anticipated. And I think that's something that I certainly look at within our group, is how do we remain as agile as possible in this in the world of unknowns at the moment. But I think definitely what my peers said is partnerships and relationships. And we've all known we've had a joint guest, or a particularly demanding couple for a wedding or something, and when we work together to bring events to life, I think that really is key to how our business operates. So I think as we work together and figure this out, new opportunities will come through the relationships that we've forged and continue to nurture over this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Pippa. Yes, so that brings us to the end of this wonderful discussion. I would love to have all the participants and all the, all the panelists take some time post the discussion to answer the questions that are there from our lovely viewers. And thank you so much once again. I think this is very insightful as we grapple with this uncertain times. We're definitely more positive post this discussion, being a part of the event industry. And I see a lot of our viewers telling us that it's been highly, highly insightful and very informative. So thank you very much once again, each and every one of you, and especially Arun and Rahul for curating such a wonderful session. So thank you so much. I had really a lot of fun to host this one. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay positive. Stay positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.